All right. Well, welcome everybody to Community Manager Live. I'm Tim McDonald and your host today. The and we just had our last person come in, but we are live and welcome to the Community Manager Live. Tim McDonald, I'm the head of community at homeroom.com or club, and each week we bring a collection of community industry professionals together to discuss a topic suggested by our audience. If you would like to chat along with us today, you can join us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Twitch, or wherever you can pull your questions in and comments right into our stream. If you prefer or just watch or listen, you can do so on Twitter, and you can find links to all those at the top of the page on our site, cmgr.live. This week we are talking about community manager reflections because it is almost the end of 2022 and the beginning of 2023. So why don't we just jump into it and get a quick round of introductions. Chris, you want to go first, and we'll just kind of throw it around the horn here.
Sounds good. So Chris Detzel, I'm the Director of Customer Community and Engagement at a company called Reltio. And I also am the founder of Peers Over Beers, which is also a community podcast. So.
And Femia?
Hi, everyone. I'm Femia Hamden. I am the community manager at Belongly, which is a mental health space for mental health professionals. And I'm also the CM for Crafted Careers, which is a space for career professionals looking to level up their careers as well.
Vinia?
Hello. My name is Vania, and I run Socially Constructed.online, which is a iterative community where we co-create information about online community. We focus primarily on the social science and leveling up your skill.
Carolyn.
Hi, I'm Carolyn. I am a community manager for a few different communities, as well as a community consultant and a social marketer. My two most passionate communities I'm most excited about being involved with are Amidst Creatives of the Midwest. We're an artist collective of Midwest creatives, as well as my own community that I run for businesses that want to not suck at marketing.
And we can all use a little less sucking these days, right? And Jeremy.
Hi, I'm Jeremy. I'm a community manager and actually just started moving into like the growth marketing space, which I'm very new to. I manage a support forum currently for Amplitude, a digital analytics solution that I invite you all to try. I love community. I'm super excited about connecting with all of you on this call, and will have to hop off a little early though. I got something on my calendar, but I'm here for the next 30 minutes.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you. So let's have you jump in, Jeremy, with the first question that we have here, which is, basically, if you could name one thing that you're proud of, one thing that you've learned, and one thing that you could have done better this year in your community.
That's a great question. I'm gonna have to think about that for a second. And it's good to see you again, Carolyn. I remember we were on one of these. Was that a month ago? I don't even know what day it is.
It was like 7 years ago, maybe.
Feels like it anyway.
It does. Yeah, it's good to see you again.
It's the holidays. Yay. My thing that I'm proud of is, I think, and I guess working at a digital analytics company, like I've really tried to flex my data-driven muscles, really working to build out that piece of the strategy. So that's what I'm proud of. What was the other thing?
One thing you've learned.
Oh, goodness. I've learned a lot this year.
But we're only going to allow you to pick one.
I've learned that you get rusty if you don't practice meeting new people. I got back out there, tried to be social, and it's been an adventure. So those are good skills to work on. And then
one thing you could have done better.
One thing I could have done better, there's always room for improvement for sure. I think for me, I want to continue to do a better job at documenting. I'm in the context of like working at a corporation, right? And I sometimes don't do the best job at tracking everything that I do in like a wiki format and getting that right. So setting aside time to think about what it is I'm doing day to day more consistently is something that I think I could do better. And more, this is like a second thing, but as part of that, I'm learning coaching skills. It's completely changed my life. So yeah.
Awesome. Who else wants to jump in?
You can go
I
ahead.
actually,
I'm sorry.
Yeah, go.
No, but yeah, all you. I can go after.
I love that when this happens with community managers, like as community managers, we're usually so good at making sure that interruptions don't happen. But when they do, it's like, no, you, I insist kind of thing.
There's either overlapping, everybody wants to talk at the same time, or this awkward dead silence where nobody's talking and then everybody talks at the same time.
Yeah. I'm actually publishing later on today on my YouTube channel a video exactly about this, where I'm reflecting on 2022 throughout November, and then just choosing to be present in December. So this is such a timely discussion about this, because I think one of my biggest successes is actually the fact that in 6 months on the YouTube channel, I managed to hit 120 watch hours. Like it's done really well. So I'm really happy about that. I call that a success. One of the things that I learned though was it's really hard to feel comfortable being vulnerable and connecting. And we're told in community that vulnerability and self-disclosure is like the holy grail of communities. But the reason it's the holy grail is because it's hard for the community manager to do it, let alone the members of that community. And I think one of my big learnings was a more empathetic understanding of what it really means to be vulnerable in a group of people that you really look up to. And I think one of my biggest failings this year was because I spent so much time in my head in dealing with the emotions of starting a consultancy in a single year and being involved in so many different communities that I'm kind of jumping around. I lost the thread of my business. I didn't really publish as many services or as many products as I really wanted to. But I'm not beating myself up for that, because I still feel like in this year, I contributed more value to the online communities I'm a part of than I thought I ever would.
And then I'll just, jump in and kind of go along with what Vienna said. So something I'm super proud of is all of the relationships that I have built since being in the community space, and really kind of just bridging that connection gap between myself and the members that I'm in the spaces with. And I have to say, like, the mentorship that's kind of come along with that, and then the trust that's been like built between us. Something that I've learned to do, or I'm learning, is to like chill out, because I'm such an innovator. I have so many ideas. I want to do everything at once, but that I need to kind of scale back on and just focus on things and know that I'm doing the very best that I can. And then what could I do better is, that's a good one. I think just knowing, again, going back is doing the very best that I can, but also that it takes time to build a community, right? It takes time to build engagement. So it's just kind of being, kind of taking yourself with some grace and knowing that you're doing the very best that you can. And, and going to what Vienna said, for me in my spaces, I'm actually okay with being vulnerable, because connectedness is one of my core strengths. I think I've accepted my level of vulnerability, and I think that's kind of helped my members kind of connect with me, but it's still sometimes like pulling teeth, because I know they're not at the same level that I'm at, and knowing that they're not, I have to kind of just be a bit more patient with them. So that's where I'm at.
Modeling behavior, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
I can go. So for me, something I'm really proud of is, you know, in my world, and I think in community in general, is the things that you really have to do is whenever you're proving inside a company the value of community, it's each person's language is different, right? So if you're talking to a marketing executive, a CS executive, product executive, those things, and then tying some of those outcomes of what community can bring to the organization, because yes, we want to build relationships with our members and things like that, but at the end of the day, we are employed and we have to show value. And I think the one thing that so I moved into the marketing organization last year at this time from the CS, and so trying to fit in and figuring out ways to do that in the marketing organization has been a challenge for me. And so one of the things I did early on was, they care about revenue and they care about, net new business and things like that. And um, so I had to figure out a way to tie community engagement uh, stuff into not just net new, but just influenced revenue. So how do you do that? And so I found out a way to do that with I have a webinar program that every single week we have people come in, they'll learn about the product, they connect to each other, that kind of stuff. And so now I can tie those people that come to the webinars into our Tableau, into our Salesforce, and into the model that we built for influenced pipeline revenue. So for example, if there's a net new opportunity built, or if there's an opportunity for a renewal, or when you think of an expansion opportunity as well. So those engagement, at least when people show up for the shows, or I call them shows, but those webinars, I can now say community has contributed X number of dollars into influenced pipeline revenue. Um, and so that's one thing I'm really proud of. Never did that before. And it got me really excited about what I can do for next year. And when I think of just true engagement for our online community and pushing that into the pipeline, or pushing that into the entire kind of thing that I did before into Tableau and stuff like that, and then start seeing likes, replies, just engagement type of things. So I'm excited about that. And then I think of like, what was the second one? Opportunity, like, where can I work on, or, is that it?
Do
Yeah.
better. Yeah. What one thing
Yeah.
you could have done better. Yeah.
Like, I think that there's a lot of things we can do better. And one of the things for me is how do I continue to talk to the business around the value of community? So when I'm talking to, we have this thing called it's a one pager, or our strategy on a page. And so how do I have my strategy on the page, it connects to the marketing, but how do I kind of get the product team, the CS team, and all those people to put community into their strategy? Can I have just one line of each? Because you know what? I'm dealing with everybody within the organization. And so trying to build that out and think strategically of how I can do those things and get that, it's not an easy thing because nobody wants to add another thing that they have to do to their but so that's one. And then what did I mess up, or what could I have done better, or whatever it was. Look, I think that sometimes I'm pretty pushy, and I push my views, and I'm excited about what I do on a daily basis. Everybody should be excited about community and these things, and they're not. Or some of them are, but not everybody is, and they might see value, but not like I do. And so it's kind of cooling down a little bit, and just saying, hey, look, you know, uh, this is how it can affect you, and just kind of be, instead of up here, just kind of come down here and just have a pure conversation around the value of what are they trying to accomplish, and how can we help each other accomplish our goals. So
You go, Carolyn.
Yeah, I'm all of these things like that everybody's brought up are like, I'm like, oh yeah, that too, and that. Like, agree so much with everything that you guys are talking about, like being proud of, learning, and wanting to improve on. A lot of the stuff that I'm super proud of and have learned are kind of like combined. I'm new to the community industry And I've been really, really proud of since April, and really kind of taking this seriously as the direction I want my career to be going. I've been really, really proud of how much I've been able to connect with other people who are in the industry. Um, and I think that's kind of like a proud / gratitude, because that, that could just be me all day messaging people on LinkedIn and they're all like, please stop. But everybody's been so generous and like with their knowledge and connecting me to opportunities, sharing the things that they did when they first started as freelancers in the community space, or suggestions of resources, things to learn from. That's been amazing. So that's one thing I'm grateful / proud of. Something that I've learned is, I mean, just looking back at the beginning of this year, I learned huge industry. Like I kind of knew, like, right, like there are communities. I had run many online for fun, for hobbies, fan communities, things like that. So I knew they existed, but the concept of there being a title like director of community or community manager within a large corporation, it didn't really occur to me until April when I attended CLIX, and I was there with we were the smallest, newest company there, my co-founder and I, when we showed up. And it was awesome getting to sit next to so many generous, knowledgeable people who were like, oh yeah, this is an industry. I've been doing this for 25 years. What do you want to know? So learning that it's an industry, big deal. And also like how a lot of the stuff that I was already doing on social marketing of modeling behaviors, right? Like that's a huge part of the social media strategies that I work with clients, is behavior modeling and relationship building. Like that is so transferable. So that's been, simultaneously like, oh, I know nothing, but also I know a few things. Like a good feeling. And then one thing that I could have done better, I think the documentation thing really hit me hard that Jeremy was talking about. We've developed for a couple of the different communities that I'm part of, like the management team of, or companies that are community led that I do marketing for now, developing SOPs. The times that I have done it, it's been amazing how easy it is to get more people on board when they can see documented, like, here are the steps we take. But I should be better at instituting those, right? Like actually being like, let's do those things. So 2023, SOPs everywhere.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think, the one thing that I've been proudest the most of this year has been like really taking my knowledge and putting it into a course that is not just geared towards community managers, but also business leaders. They might not want to take the whole course, but at least part of it. So that was, I think, probably the proudest thing. One thing that I've really learned, and I've been doing this for a while, but it's just that, really understanding that sometimes the way you look at things is not the way that they appear, and really kind of taking that step back and getting different viewpoints, different perspectives, and trying to figure out exactly really why things are, what you can do with them, and how you can really turn that into, working with working more effectively with, because we work with clients, not just, our own community. So really how we can apply that to working and giving better results for our clients. I think the one thing that I probably could have done better is I've kind of removed myself from the community space for a few years, and coming back in, I don't think I've given myself enough credit for what I know and the people I know. And I kind of got this like little syndrome of like, oh, I'm in this world. I don't know everybody in it anymore because there's so many people that have joined it. And so it's like, really like that confidence that, I used to have as a community manager, really regaining that, I think, is one thing that I look forward to doing more into 2023. So, And Carolyn, I thought your thing was going to be giving yourself more credit for what you actually knew when you said what you could do better.
That's very kind of you.
I was going to point that out. Like, Carolyn, I don't think honestly that you're a beginner in community at all. I think that that's something moving forward into 2023 that you should shed, because honestly, you have a voice and it does resound and people want to hear it.
Oh, well, this is like group therapy session. Thank you.
No, but there's a lot of truth in what Vienna said, because I've been an educator for over 10 years, and I was like, wait a second, how would I even transfer over into community? But I'm like, wait, I've been doing community for so many years, but just with a different targeted audience, right? So, there's a lot of transferable skills that you have, but it's just articulating it in the sense of community. So we all have it. We just got to own it, like Vienna said.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I think it's a group. That's a group goal. We're all gonna just be really so much better at articulating our skill set.
Mm-hmm.
And I totally agree with that concept of like transferable skills, but also by industry, like in the nonprofit industry, in the tech industry, there are all types of communities that people are building across all industries. And it's funny to think about, because I feel like sometimes we talk about community as an industry or as something that companies, people, organizations care about or want to build as this novel concept. But I think it's been, as long as humans have existed, we've get together, look for people to hang out with. Like, I don't think, it's this.
It's not new.
This shiny new thing. It is, I guess, when you start creating products and you start creating jobs. But I don't know.
Even then, though, I think about from an industrial product-based standpoint, community isn't new, because so I grew up on a farm. I think about farmers who are come together and they're like, we hate this plow. It gets stuck in the mud. And then they figure out how to make a better plow. And then that becomes a whole company. It's always taken a collective to figure out problems and develop.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing in 2023 that the industry as a whole is starting to learn and understand, is that organizations are not people. Organizations are not corporations or top-down deliberative systems that you build. They're associations. They are groups of people who get together under one moniker with a shared mission, but who have individual objectives, goals, and visions for themselves. When a person joins a business and says, I'm going to move up the corporate ladder, they're not doing it to move up the corporate. Well, most of them are not moving up there to just drive up the corporate ladder. They want to achieve something, and I think that we're starting to learn that as we start to grip more of open source and more of community management and letting go of power so that other people can achieve more without you having to put in as much effort.
I think that's going to be a really long path.
Oh yeah, I definitely agree.
For most companies, they're scared. Yeah. They're too scared.
Yeah.
You saw that kind of with the return to events, in-person events. That's a community thing, right? And seeing how it's exactly the same as 2019, a lot of events, which is exactly the same as 1961. Trade shows, it's the same place. So I think a lot of people are scared of letting go of that and letting people co-create.
I agree.
Hopefully change.
Yeah, but there was also one other thing that I wanted to respond to something that you said, Carolyn, which was the farmer idea in the farmer situation, where it's these communities and these iterative building strategies have been around for a while. One of the most common pieces of advice that I tend to give all of my clients is from church organizations that have existed since 1200, right? And that is that you don't advertise or preach or request volunteers from the pulpit. The priest isn't going, hey, we need volunteers for this thing. That's done at the coffee hour. That's done in the hallways. That's done in the grapevine communication, where you're like, hey, you've been really, really good to this church. Would you be interested in doing some babysitting during the next sermon? And it is far more successful than trying to get volunteers from a pulpit.
I like that. So have you guys seen any significant changes that you think happened in this past year in community, in the industry?
Yes. I think, with one, there's layoffs going on with the big with the economy, right? So, tech companies in general are very leery of investing, and they're starting to lay off. And so, and I've seen it even in the community industry. So you're seeing even community managers, or again, this big bang of community managers coming in. I wouldn't say it's a bing bang coming out, but you are seeing some layoffs in the space of community, but not just there. It's in the tech space, and I think that it's tough, right? So you got to even show your value in a bigger way. What value is your community bringing to your organization? Even if they see big value, there's still that you still not might not make the cut. So I think it's bigger than ever right now, and the economy is just now kind of going like this, right? So thinking about next year, it's probably not going to get much better. So and that's not to be doom or glooms, but I think the opportunity for us as leaders in the community space is, we've got to be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more kind of high level thinking to say community brings value in these ways, whether it's revenue, whether it's helping the product get better, or whatever it is, kind of community that you're building. And we got to think a little bit higher level than, hey, um, well, they're doing these things, they answered 20 questions, so what? What does that mean? Like, you answered 20 questions, well, that means case deflection equals X amount of dollars, or I don't know, whatever it is that you're trying to to communicate. It's got to be at their level, and it's got to be a big impact if you want to keep community around, or your job, right? And I think that's huge right now.
Yeah, Chris, I wanted to ask you this, and I'm kind of opening up a can of worms here, probably for all of us. But I think we've all heard the term community-led organization, yep. Right? And when you brought this up, it made me think: how would you define community-led? And do you think that these companies that are having these layoffs are truly community-led?
I mean, somebody mentioned something earlier that people. Look, the communities really are about sharing and all these things, and organizations are embracing it. And I think in some areas, when you look at, developers and things like that, that's true, but I think that to me, community led means it's a lot of different things. But one is, how do you I've been thinking about this a lot, and it feels like that community led kind of thing has died down a little bit, right? It was like this, and now you don't hear it as much. But the way I kind of see it is, how do you look at programs that are truly community led? Let's say, we're in the data industry and master data management, but instead of focusing in on just master data management, how do we start looking at, our customers, our prospects, or whatever, bringing them in to do, it could be a show or webinar or a podcast to talk about what problems are they solving within the industry, right? What problems, why, how are you building a master data management practice? How are you looking at data governance? How are you looking at, data mesh, and are you implementing those into that? You start bringing those people in that really care about that kind of stuff, and then people start coming. And I think that's one. And then two is, if it's about a product, then how do you kind of, when you look at some of these technical communities, what kind of say do they have in your innovation and your ideation and those kinds of things? I think that, how do you implement that directly into the PM organization? How do you look at marketing, and how do these people want to be marketed to? Do they want to? So it's a lot of different things, I think. But I think community led is a very hard thing to do. So the things you hear now is product led, community led, whatever led. Whenever you listen to, 'cause they're all saying the same stuff that you are, but they're being more focused in on their areas. So how do you kind of sort of mesh those together and just start talking the same language really is the key. And is there really anybody community led? So yeah, I think there's some, but right now to me it's just it's not completely a buzzword, but it's a buzzword.
Yeah. It's funny that you say that, Chris, because it is a buzzword, right? Sad there are, layoffs in the CM field. I have colleagues that have just been laid off, which is so sad to hear about. But then what's also crazy is that it's such a buzzword that I see the word community blasted everywhere. So I always say, the people on top are doing what they need to do, but then again, are they remembering to really kind of take care and nurture the members, the folks, the customers, right? So that's why I come in and I say, hey, yeah, there is a need for community managers, because who's taking care of them? Who's checking in on them, checking to make sure that their questions are answered, that they're being supported? Do you really know what they need? Do you really know what they want? Because you're busy on top doing all these things, but let's not forget that they're the ones that drive the business. We need them. So I always say that's why community managers are needed, right? Can't forget about our people. It's all about the people.
And so I've been struggling because one of the big things about me is I tend to attach things to theories, to academic kind of concepts. So when I heard the term community-led, the one thing that came up in my mind was an interview that Adrian had with Deb Shell on the Community podcast. And I also touched it in my interview with him as well, where in his opinion, we need to start adapting the buzzwords of the time, because the buzzwords of the time are how people get introduced to the conversation. And yet those same buzzwords, by virtue of introducing people to a conversation, they become more vague. In becoming more inclusive, they become more wide, and they cast a wider net. A really, really good example in our industry is the term community manager. What does that mean? It introduces a lot more people into the field, but in all reality, there are community architects, facilitators, coordinators. It's a huge amount of roles. And in academia, when we talk about the community-led industry, what that's really saying is that we are becoming associative, deliberative organizations. We are no longer systematic engines that we try to run in order to accomplish specific goals. We are actual human ecosystems of people living in association and having discussions that include contention. And in my view, that is what community-led really means. Are you taking an approach that is more deliberative in nature and ensures that a wider variety of voices are heard? I think that community-led is a really good catch-all for that general concept, but being more specific about our language as we level up as community managers creates a better understanding for what actions we need to take in our daily lives and careers.
I think the other thing is as you kind of look at that term in general, there's several terms. Like you look at Forrester Research, they'll come out with, data mesh or whatever. What the hell does that even mean, right? And it's like, but they came up with that term 5 to 7 years ago or 7 years ago. It's just now that that's being implemented and that's being defined, into organizations, because of, it takes time to kind of cultivate it, and things like that. So I believe that, it's going to take time to really understand and implement a true community-led kind of growth, if you want, or community-led organization or whatever, and so, just, let's keep talking about it. Let's keep, iterating around it. Let's keep doing things around it. And then, all of a sudden it becomes, instead of just a buzzword, because to some degree it is, you see a lot of stuff on it. And it's good. We need to talk about it because you are seeing more community leaders, community managers, community operations, community whatever, so we have to keep pushing, and until, it all of a sudden just becomes everyday thing, yeah, we're community led. That's not even a question, but a lot of us aren't, and that's okay, because we have to be the ones that educate our leaders within the organizations. We have to do that. That's on us, right? And we have to take ownership. Not so-and-so's not listening to me anymore. Oh my God, I can't do this anymore. No, you can't do that, right? We take ownership and say, yes, it's frustrating that this person's not. How can I change my approach? How can I think of it? That's the only way it's going to happen is we just own it.
Because Chris, a lot of people have asked me, what is a community manager? What the heck is it? Do never ever hear of that title. And
That's right.
I see like a lot of job descriptions, for example, companies like, ooh, the buzzword community manager, and then they throw in all this stuff into one piece. But I'm like, community is much more than right what you said, a buzzword. So it's really up to us, right, to really drive what that is and to show the impact that we can have and as a community as a whole. But yeah, I can't tell you the number of times I've gotten that
Me too.
question.
That's a mission.
What do you do? And I'm like, we do a lot.
Do you know Reddit?
That has been going on for 15 years or more.
I can't even tell you the amount of questions I keep getting.
I think that's a mission for 2023. We really need to, for 2023 as an industry, and this is going to be January's first video, I genuinely believe that going into 2023, we need to be far more explicit about leaving the online community space so that we're not just community managers talking to community managers, even if they're beginning community managers. We need to leave our environments and be very intentional about how we describe and define our jobs, not just to defend our roles with people, but to make this as an industry more specific.
And that's something that I experienced in one of my roles. I'm director of marketing at Communify, and we're a community reporting tool, a data like software startup. And we attended Event Tech Live a couple weeks ago in London, which was amazing because no one had any idea what community was. Like, there were quite a few people there that were like, community was talked about a lot. And I saw that Matthias was in the chat. He and I have been talking about this since we got back, because it's how he came into community, was through events. It was fascinating to have conversations with companies that had banners up that were like community, like community-led marketing, or different things like for your events, right? And so we were going around and discussing with them, like, oh yeah, cool, you're in community, we're in community, we're a data reporting tool, and learning what their view of what the word community meant, just definition-wise to them. It was so educational and really interesting to come back with, like, oh, that's why hybrid events are failing. Like, just seeing like very clearly coming from community specific bubble and then going into another space and seeing what is being talked about as community. You're like, that's why the mark is being missed for these different spaces. That's why they're not fully understanding. And it's not like that's because they're foolish or unintelligent. It's just more, they're not seeing it from a human perspective, where I think most community industry professionals, like, we are so surrounded by humans online all the time. We know how they interact, what they want, because they're telling us usually.
It's that human connection.
Yeah. And I think a lot of bigger companies, mediumer companies, tech companies, people in the event space, they miss that. They're thinking more of like execution. Like, okay, we're done with this event, next event. Not necessarily like, what after that event would a human want?
Yeah.
What are they
kind
missing?
of speaking of, it was super, super frequent when I was working at Keystone Symposia, because we were running 65 events in any given year. The second an event finished, you're like, let's continue the conversation on the online forum. And for the longest time, I kept like just sending Google Analytics, just simple page views of running up to the event. Here's the forum performance. And then the event happened. And then I'm like, see this cliff drop off? We need to fix that. And on the regular, people were like, oh no, we don't need to fix that. That's just how it works for people. And I'm like, no, that's how you're making it work for people. People want to interact. The community's not going away. They are continuing those conversations. We just shut down the place where we want them to have that conversation. So they've gone elsewhere.
Because it goes back to that whole piece of like wanting them to belong in a space like what you were saying, Vienna, about having their voices heard. And if we take that away from them, then they're kind of like, well, what's the point of me being in this space, you know, from the very beginning? And we need those conversations because that's how we learn about what's working, what's not, what they like, what they don't like. It's all in the feedback too, which is really important to take in.
When I think, we got to remember too that this past year has been a big year of transition in how our whole world is, because for the previous 2 years, we were all forced to really be online, right? And be remote and connect digitally. And now this is the first year that we've really had that opportunity to get back in person. And I think a lot of companies and industries that invested heavily in bringing people together online either haven't or didn't foresee that we were going to be transitioning back to kind of this hybrid environment where we do have in-person things and we do have stuff online. And how do you make that still work, and how do you bring all that together? And I do think there are companies that have done it successfully, but I think the biggest thing, and I think this is just true for most industries, at least here in the US, is, they're not trying to get ahead and build a wave. They're more willing to ride a wave. And what we're seeing now, I think, is they're riding the wave and they're too late to get off and create the next one. And I think that's why we're seeing some of these layoffs. That's why but there are some that are doing good. And that's the one thing that I'm encouraged about, I think, happening is seeing more companies that are getting started, that are pivoting in new ways, that are really baking this whole community aspect into their entire organization, not just a department in an organization. And that to me is really showing some promise for where I think we can go as an industry in 2003 and beyond, is those leaders that are actually understanding this. And I'm just like, there's another question about like what do we see happening next year? But I'm like, I think we've kind of addressed that a little bit. I don't want to go there, but I'm like, this is why, like, I'm not pointing fingers and I'm not, propping anybody up. It's just, I think it's a matter of the way business works typically is most businesses don't want to take heavy risks and they're doing the safe play. And I think this is where community managers can come in. And I mean, I know if you've been in this space for any amount of time, you know that you need to test things out, try things out, obviously go in with an educated guess, but not everything is going to be a success. You're going to have failures, right? And that to me is, I think, what businesses need to get a little bit more comfortable about. So talking about failures, and it doesn't have to be a failure, it could be a good thing. Let's talk about the craziest community thing that you saw happen in 2022.
All right.
I'll go in from curious to a little bit funny,
We've been creeping around the elephant in the room almost the entire hour here with like various different questions, but we should probably talk about the rapid inflation and then sudden devolution of the Web3 spaces. Especially given that there are a few that are still remarkably successful. What kept them standing, I think that's a really, really big elephant in the room that is directly related to this.
I have a lot of thoughts about Web3.
It's the elephant in the room, right? Like, what's the craziest thing to happen in community? The Web3 thing.
I mean, I would argue the craziest thing to happen in community was Twitter, but that's a whole separate discussion. Especially, I don't know if anybody saw Crunch's article this morning about spaces being deactivated.
No, I didn't see that.
Yeah, so apparently there was a glitch where people who had their accounts suspended could still interact in Twitter spaces. So Elon joined one with a bunch of journalists that he had previously kicked off Twitter. And they were all just chilling in a space, having a chit chat, little gossip time. And yeah, so that happened this morning. But that's a whole...
And in order to stop them from doing that, he turned spaces off?
Yeah.
Entirely?
That's the logical thing. Temporarily, entirely. Yes. So if you go on Twitter right now and try to get into a Twitter space, you will not
It will fail. Wow.
I think a lot of that just
Breaking news here, by the way.
no, it's breaking news.
Damn.
You're not as chronically online as I am. That's good for you guys.
Has anyone told Jen Junod at Teach Gen Tech yet?
Well, I do think, to your point, Venia, that you know, because my company really focuses on, we call it Web 2.5, the transition between Web 2 and Web 3. And so I am not a Web 3 native. And so I started like exploring all these people and organizations that were talking about Web 3 communities and how different it was and how unique it was and the challenges and how it was so much vastly different than Web 2. And as I got into those things, all the core principles of community still existed. They didn't change.
But they were reinvented, allegedly.
As a new thing. And so for me, that's like the craziest thing, that you can take the core concepts and principles and call it something completely new.
I think the beauty of being, in this space for so long is I can go to any organization, I think, and build a community from ground up, from whatever, and I don't need to know. I'm not saying I don't get to know, and it does help, but at the beginning, I don't have to know the industry specifically. I know how to build an online community, and I know the programs that you need to build to make it successful for the most part, right? You might just say, well, that program probably won't work for this, but this program will, you know what I mean? And it's the beauty about that is that it's transferable. It's really all I'm trying to say, is that our skills, you think of, building a community from ground up, you need engagement strategy, you need content strategy, you need to know how to get people in. I mean, it's just same core concepts, whether it's Web3, whether it's Web 2, whether it's another industry, insurance company, or, tech company, it doesn't matter. It's the same core. People want to connect about similar things, period. Whether it's Web3, it doesn't matter. Like, so you create that space so that they can do that, right? And so, look, Web3, I think it's real, but it has a long ways to go. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of stuff it has to develop. It's kind of like the community-led growth or community-led thinking, right? It's the same. Like, I remember when Web 2 came up, and before apps were big, there's an app ecosystem. Apple and Google, they all have apps that you download. They didn't have that. I remember at Forrester, I worked there for several years, and the CEO, George Colony, said, look, we're going to have this app ecosystem to where businesses use apps, we use apps, and that's before apps for the most part. And so that's like, what's after apps? He goes, what do you mean what's after apps? I'm telling you, we haven't even had this yet. And so, it will take time to develop, just because it's going to take years, not 1 year, 6 months or whatever. It just isn't, so we'll just have to see how it goes. And, and I think it's true. Yes, Web3 is a thing. It's going to happen. And there's going to be some there's going to be something that, is going to be amazing in 4 or 5 years, I think, maybe longer, but it takes time. Web 2.0 is still not done. We still don't get engagement down on online communities for Web 2. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. Like, the biggest thing that you hear today is, how do you engage your members? We don't have it down. Like, there's not a secret sauce. There are tactics to drive it that do work sometimes, but sometimes it doesn't. It's always evolving. So
that's funny you say that, Chris, because that's been one of my challenges, is building a community from the ground up. Is the engagement piece. It's flourishing in other areas, but when you're starting it again, you forget, right, what it takes to really drive that engagement. But it just comes back to building that trust, and it's trial and error. As community managers, we know that, like you said, Tim, not everything we do is going to work, so we just got to come with another way. We've got to just be open-minded and flexible, trying different things and being okay with it too, right? So
just have a good strategy, and then the tactics to drive the strategy, right? I mean, it's really what it boils down to.
I remember when I moved from Chicago to New York, and in Chicago, I was so, I had known like everybody in the Chicago area that was online and in community management. So if I was throwing an event or wanted something, I could just put something out there and people showed up or they replied or engaged with me. I went to New York and it was like, tried that same thing and it's like, whoops, this doesn't work. And, you need to start from the ground up again. And it's like, but it's the same thing when you're building a community too, right? It's like, you can't just walk in and bring your past results that you've done somewhere else and have it transfer over into your new community. You can take those lessons and learnings, but you can't just apply everything to your new community. It's like starting from the scratch again.
And I've only worked in scratch built communities. So wow, a long-standing community. What's that like?
I think the really funny thing about this is we're having this discussion about like, how do you maintain proper engagement? How do you control all of these policies? And it kind of comes full circle, full loop to the fact that we are watching one man who accidentally on purpose ruined an entire platform of thousands of online communities. And we're watching him learn real time, oops, this doesn't work.
Or just that, I mean, people, it's the people, right? You can't control a community. At best, it's a beautiful, flourishing society. At worst, it's a horrifying mob, right? Like that's what a community is.
Well, the community roundtable. I don't know if they still use this tagline, but I have a T-shirt still in my closet from them that says "Control is for amateurs." And I mean, that's exactly what you're saying, though, right? It's like you can't control a community, but that's what makes it beautiful. But it's also why I think a lot of organizations are scared of it, is because you can't.
They should be, though, right? Like you should approach it with a sense of respect, because, like, yeah, the community can turn on you, and they're going to go and develop what they want if you're not listening to them. Like we're seeing that happen, real time with Twitter, with Mastodon becoming more popular and Tumblr making a comeback. Like my college self is so excited to see that. Like the use cases for these apps were like zero right before all this chaos happened. People are going to go seek out the type of space they want if your community is flat out refusing to provide it and you're not listening. So I think there's so many businesses, right, that have a rightful fear because they know they're not going to listen to the humans. Like I think about a lot of the companies that I see wanting to scrub the internet of communities that exist about them, not to name names, but we know them. We know the one.
I mean, it can also be your best defense, right? Like I've talked about this for a long time. If you have a loyal community, I mean, you don't need a PR team to come in and handle crisis management, right? Your community is going to react before you can get it to the first level of escalation within your company. Right. They're going to be at your defense, but it can also turn the other way as well if you're not loyal to them.
Totally. And like I think about, different companies that fear the community and like take steps to make them disappear, and what the perception is about those companies just in general. Like people are going to talk smack about you. Why not own the place where they're going to talk smack about you so you can use it to improve stuff?
And that's the point, right? I mean, isn't that what we want? We want the community. We want the people to talk and give us feedback. How else are we going to know what's working, what's not, and how is it going to be successful? And I've noticed that a lot of companies are scared of that. But my thing is, I need them to talk, whether I like the feedback or I don't. It's really what helps me drive, the impact and engagement in these conversations. And for me, as a CM, I've been in spaces where I just did not belong or was not fit in for whatever reason. And I'm just like, heck, I'm going to go in a space where actually people are going to listen to me. So why not embody that as a community person? Like, hey, I'm listening, I'm here. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah.
So why don't we try and make this our last question? And I know we got it up there as 2023 because we're talking about reflections, but maybe it's looking into 2023 or 2022, looking into 2023. But what was kind of your favorite community moment of this year, or something that started this year that you're looking forward to in 2023?
Is this like with the lens of like a personal community moment, or like
whatever you want? There's no.
Okay.
Carolyn, you've been here enough time. There's no.
I didn't know if there was a way you were planning on having this question answered.
I don't
guess-
plan on anything. David came up with the questions. I just read them.
He's not even here. He's in the chat. He can't really say.
I saw him in the chat earlier. So I think for me, it's kind of looking at, somebody mentioned events, and community is a lot of different things, whether it's online community, whether it's through webinars, or doing stuff offline through events and stuff like that. And so I started this community kind of events, I call them roundtables. So it's a dinner, things like that. And I saw a lot of from a both customer and prospect standpoint, we saw a lot of really awesome engagement from them. So people showing up, people engaging in specific topics, and we probably did about 5 to 6 of them specifically around community, and I'm really looking forward to doing more of that this next year, because people they're getting together, they want to meet face to face and things like that. And then the last piece of that is really embedding community into the sales organization more, right? So when you think of community members that are already about your product, using your product, let's just say, and then people that aren't, bring those two people together, the opportunities to, one, hey, there's just people, they want to talk about how to build a great data practice or whatever, a strategy around that. So, but they'll just start talking about your product, our customers, to those prospects. And so kind of getting the organization to see more of that is a good accomplishment, but also a really good way of embedding yourself into both marketing and sales, because sales wants more leads, and marketing wants more leads, but also the CS organization wants people to connect to others. So I think that, to me, is what I'm looking forward to the most.
For me, what I'm looking forward to is, I'm in the mental health space with mental health professionals. So we know that mental health professionals do so much, right, to help their patients, their clients, but the angle we're coming from in that space is who's helping the helpers, right? So if you look up things of like how people are, or what resources are there out there to help these mental health professionals, there's not a lot. So I'm looking forward to just continually finding ways to better support them and to really drive them together to connect and support one another, and know that there are people behind them as well who want to help them so that they can continue helping their patients. So, and mental health is I think a topic that we need to talk more of moving forward in 2023. And it's just a topic that's near and dear to me. So I'm just really fortunate to be in that kind of space to help them.
Truth be told, for me, I think that the most momentous occasion is definitely the launching of Adrian Spire's book. I absolutely adore this thing. Strongly recommend the read. And I think that's probably my favorite moment in community, because this came out and I feel like all of the new community managers, all of the experienced community managers, we all collectively gave out a breath of a sigh, because this is the book that our industry really needed,
A favorite moment for me was attending CMX. Was really, really fun. Shout out to Venya for getting me there with the very last second tickets, which was awesome. Getting to go to that was really fun. Getting to meet people in person was really, really fun. But I think like the sub moment part of that was like really, really important to me was getting to hear Priya Parker talk. Her book, The Art of Gathering, was a catalyst for me in this community building journey. When I became an official community manager for first startup community, the Arts Collective, that I am co-founder of now, my now co-founder suggested I read the book. So I immediately read it. And getting to hear her insights on what the importance of gathering is in the community in this post-COVID space, that was really meaningful to me and very, very insightful. I really enjoyed that, and also got to hang out with Adrian there. And then here, that was right before his book came out, so I was like super amped. Ordered it the second he got that link. Reading that book, really, really great. Just in general, a lot of really almost like full circle moments for education and growth for me. So that was like special 2022 community moments.
Well, I'll just be quick here, and then we could go around and tell people how to get in touch with us. I think one of my favorite moments, and it's still continuing because it's not done yet, is my personal kind of passion project about, looking for a living liver donor and seeing how people are coming together and the gift that they can give through donating part of their body to another human being. And one of those human beings, hopefully being me in 2023, is like, one of I think the most unbelievable, things. I mean, you always hear how bad cancer is, and I'm not trying to sugarcoat it by any means, but it's like when you come together in this community and you bring people together and you hold somebody's hand while they're taking their own steps in their own journey. It's one of the, I always said, if I could take the feeling of the fullness I get in my heart from doing that and live off of it, I wouldn't have to make a dollar in my life because I would be the richest person in the world. And that's, I think, my favorite community moment of 2022, but we're going to see the ROI of it in 2023. So, but you could get me I'm still on Twitter at TA McDonald, or you can just find me on LinkedIn or Facebook or Twitter, wherever. Chris, where can people get you, and where do you want them to find you?
Yeah, you look at Chris Detzel on LinkedIn, Peers Over Beers at Peers Beers on Twitter. So that's pretty much it.
Minia?
You're muted.
Oh, you're muted. Yeah. Nope. All of a sudden, we can't hear you. Mimia, you want to go?
Sure. So you can find me for Mia Hampton at LinkedIn. I practically am fluttering around in that area, and then also at Belongly, but you have to be a mental health professional licensed to get into that space. So if you are listening, it is a free platform to be connected with other individuals.
And Carolyn?
You can find me on LinkedIn. I'm chronically online in that space. Also at badaxe.enterprises on all the different social media channels, probably most active on Instagram for that handle, but LinkedIn is the quickest way to get a hold of me.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, you are.
Wonderful. Great. I think I sat on this. I think I've actually been making a pretty big bid about the YouTube channel. So that's going to be a really, really great place to get in contact with me, is Socially Constructed Online, the YouTube channel, and join the community Discord. We would love to have you there, have really strong conversations about the things that you've learned over the course of several weeks. And we'll be starting up the Information Diet Book Club in mid-January, in addition to a cohort course that I'm starting on the 9th of January as well.
Awesome. Well, I just want to thank all of our guests here, and David showed up in the comments for joining us today, and our audience, which we had quite a few people chiming in. So if you enjoyed this, please like, subscribe, follow on the platform of your choice, especially on YouTube if you would. And if you would like to be a guest on an upcoming episode or have a topic you would like us to cover, please head over to cmgr.live, click on the Contact Us button, and fill out the form. And if you prefer an audio-only version, you can find our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, and many more. Again, thank you to our guests, and thank you for joining us. And just as a reminder, this is our final episode of CMGR Live of 2022, and we look forward to really kind of revamping it, still having some fun, but getting a lot more knowledge and different topics in 2003. So I just want to thank everybody that's been a part of this, David DeWald for kind of bringing me in and creating all this. And I think it's well needed in the space. We need to have conversations about community, help others getting into it, help others who are in it and evolve, and all of us have something to learn no matter how much experience we have. So thank you all for being here. Wishing everybody a happy holiday and a very happy new year, and we'll see you in 2023.
Awesome.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.